Outliers, the Story of Success. Excerpt from Chapter 2, The 10,000 Hour Rule, by Malcolm Gladwell. For almost a generation, psychologists around the world have been engaged in a spirited debate over a question that most of us would consider to have been settled years ago. The question is this: is there such a thing as innate talent? The obvious answer is yes. Not every hockey player born in January ends up playing at the professional level. Only some do, the innately talented ones. Achievement is talent plus preparation. The problem with this view is that the closer psychologists look at the careers of the gifted, the smaller the role innate talent seems to play, and the bigger the role preparation seems to play. Exhibit A in the talent argument is a study done in the early 1990s by the psychologist K. Anders Ericsson and two colleagues at Berlin's Elite Academy of Music. With the help of the Academy's professors, they divided the school's violinists into three groups. And the first group were the stars, the students with the potential to become world-class soloists. And the second were those judged to be merely good. And the third were students who were unlikely to ever play professionally and who intended to be music teachers in the public school system. All the violinists were then asked the same question. Over the course of your entire career, ever since you first picked up the violin, how many hours have you practiced? Everyone from all three groups started playing at roughly the same age, around 5 years old. In those first few years, everyone practiced roughly the same amount, about 2 or 3 hours a week. But when the students were around the age of 8, real differences started to emerge. The students who would end up the best in their class began to practice more than everyone else. 6 hours a week by age 9, 8 hours a week by age 12, 16 hours a week by age 14, and up until the age of 20, they were practicing, that is, purposefully and single-mindedly playing their instruments with the intent to get better, well over 30 hours a week. In fact, by the age of 20, the elite performers had each totaled 10,000 hours of practice. By contrast, the merely good students had totaled 8,000 hours, and the future music teachers had totaled just over 4,000 hours. Ericsson and his colleagues then compared amateur pianists with professional pianists. The same pattern emerged. The amateurs never practiced more than about 3 hours a week over the course of their childhood, and by the age of 20, they had totaled 2,000 hours of practice. The professionals, on the other hand, steadily increased their practice time every year until by the age of 20, they, like the violinist, had reached 10,000 hours. The striking thing about Ericsson's study is that he and his colleagues couldn't find any naturals, musicians who floated effortlessly to the top while practicing a fraction of the time their peers did. Nor could they find any grinds, people who worked harder than everyone else, yet just didn't have what it takes to break the top ranks. Their research suggests that once a musician has enough ability to get into the top music school, the thing that distinguishes one performer from another is how hard he or she works. That's it. And what's more, the people at the very top don't work just harder or even much harder than everyone else. They work much, much harder. The idea that excellence at performing a complex task requires a critical minimum level of practice surfaces again and again in studies of expertise. In fact, researchers have settled on what they believe is the magic number for true expertise: 10,000 hours. The emerging picture from such studies is that 10,000 hours of practice is required to achieve the level of mastery associated with being world-class expert in anything, writes neurologist Daniel Levitin. In study after study of composers, basketball players, fiction writers, ice skaters, concert pianists, chess players, master criminals, and what have you, this number comes up again and again. Of course, this doesn't address why some people get more out of their practice sessions than others do, but no one has yet found a case in which true world-class expertise was accomplished in less time. It seems that it takes the brain this long to assimilate all that it needs to know to achieve true mastery. This is even true of people we think as prodigies. Mozart, for example, famously started writing music at 6. But, writes the psychologist Michael Howe in his book Genius Explained, by the standards of mature composers, Mozart's early works are not outstanding. The earliest pieces were all probably written down by his father, and perhaps improved in the process. Many of Wolfgang's childhood compositions, such as the first 7 of his concertos for piano and orchestra, are largely arrangements of works by other composers. One of those concertos that only contain music original to Mozart, the earliest is now regarded as a masterwork, was not composed until he was 21. By that time, Mozart had already been composing concertos for 10 years. The music critic Harold Schoenberg goes further. Mozart, he argues, actually developed late, since he didn't produce his greatest work until he'd been composing for more than 20 years. So 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 44 weeks a year for 5.5 years, better get started. What I want you to do now is on the bottom of your paper, write either your claim of you are in control of your own fate or your claim of you are not in control of your own fate. Once you do that, you're going to look back in the text and you're going to highlight 3 pieces of evidence to back you up.